So we turn our attention now to burnout. And I know I say that like that deliberately because sometimes we don't even ourselves recognize when we are experiencing burnout, or maybe we don't quite understand how to define when we are having burnout. And that is what we want to dispel for you today. And then what do we do? What do we do? How do we create the balance that we're all seeking to have as we live? We want to live life with purpose, but we want to live life happily as well. So how do we reach the balance? We're joined this morning by Tanja Gittins, who is a personal wealth strategist and an author as well. She's looked at this very critically. We believe she has some solutions. Good morning to you, Tanja.
Good morning, Pearson. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us indeed. So how do we define burnout?
Well, burnout, according to the World Health Organization, is actually a workplace phenomenon. They have said that it comes from the workplace. It is not a critical illness. And while there's some research now going on about whether burnout can come from other areas of your life, like financial stress or carers burnout, according to the established definition by the World Health Organization, it is a workplace phenomenon. And it comes basically from when you work in an environment where you don't have control, when systems don't work, if you are working excessive amounts of hours, or if you work in an environment that is hostile or abusive. And that is what creates that burnout in you.
Everybody's watching us. That sounds like me, you know, almost in totality. But at the same time, there are different elements. We all experience burnout in so many different ways, and we display burnout in so many different ways. So let's look a little bit at how do we show, how do we know now, based upon what you just said, that what we are experiencing can be termed as burnout?
So in some areas, it can look like the decisions that you're making. What people have is decision fatigue. So it gets to the point where you just cannot make another decision today, or you find yourself apprehensive about your decisions. And because of that, there's also a financial element of that, because people who go through like decision fatigue, etc., tend to make impulsive buying decisions that they would not normally make if they were not experiencing that level of burnout. Burnout can also formulate in the way that you become a negative person. You may not necessarily be a negative person or what people call a cynic, but when you're burnout, you just have that type of behavior because you feel like there is no hope. Of course, there's the health aspects of it, there is the fatigue. You can get to the point where you just don't really care about things anymore. And it also looks at your productivity in terms of the level of what you're producing, the quality of what you're producing. So it can manifest itself in different ways, and that's outside of your health, because there's a whole other section of looking at it from a physical health perspective or even a mental health perspective.
And oftentimes those in the office say, well, then clearly you're having a problem at home because there are others in the office who don't have the same experience that you're having. And I think that's sometimes why people misdiagnose it or don't recognize this is exactly what this individual is struggling with. They don't see it as an individual experience, they see it as a group experience. So if the group is functioning, but you are having a problem, then you are the problem. And you're saying to officers today, stop for just a moment and as we say, smell the roses and see that this child, this one, is having a challenge. And what are we doing? Listen to them as well. Is what you're saying?
Yes, and because in everything in life, there's going to be that personal experience. And we are all made up different. You know, we have different experience which translates to who we are as a person. You can come into a room, I come into that room, there's a smell in that room, it affects you, it doesn't affect me. And you know, we just have different experiences in life. We have different coping mechanisms in life. We are raised different, our resilience look different. So because a person is not manifesting this type of behavior, even in terms of personalities. You know, everyone in the office doesn't have the same level of personality. You have an office that, let's say, may be chaotic. As an introverted person, it means that you're on high alert all day long. That doesn't always translate for the person who's a more extroverted type of person and wants to bounce around to everybody's cubicle to talk all day. So as individuals, we all have our personal experience in life to begin with. So it will look and translate different in the workplace as well.
And so in the workplace, if we don't pay attention, if we don't try to respond to it, there's a cost.
Yes.
There's something we're losing. And sometimes that loss is productivity.
Yes.
Or people just show up and they're just not there.
Yes.
So at the same time. And that reflects in our bottom line.
Yes.
So we have to be very conscious. And so this message is really to who? The HR practitioner, or is this to everyone within the office?
It's to everyone. There is an individual aspect of it where you have to take control for yourself in terms of setting boundaries and to understand what burnout looks like for you, or to understand what your experience is and what you're going through and how you are going to, what mechanisms you're going to put in place for you. It also comes from the work environment in terms of producing a work environment. You know, people are entitled to go to work in an environment that is not hostile, is not abusive, and is conducive to work. But there is also a larger, bigger picture in terms of productivity, and even for the country as a whole. You know, there are some statistics out there which we've not yet been able to put a dollar value for Barbados, but if I share some statistics, they're saying between $4,000 to $20,000 per individual is what you can lose in productivity. And when you were saying about people are present but not there, there's a new term we have for that now called presenteeism. And it has become very prevalent since COVID, and persons have come back to the office where an individual could be present physically, but they're not mentally there. So there is a cost of burnout. There is a cost in terms of lack of productivity. And this is even before we get to the cost of, you know, like absenteeism and people staying home from work and the work not getting done, and, you know, what it costs for a business when you have persons who are there may not be performing to the level at which they are producing. There is a cost for everyone.
Our ears prick when we hear dollar signs.
Yes.
You know, so I want you to repeat that statistic again.
Between 4,000 to 20,000 per person per year is what burnout actually costs in terms of lack of productivity or presenteeism.
And if you multiply that by the number of people in the organization, you're heading for a significant figure at the end of it. So we see the bottom line, and we see the effect, therefore, on the bottom line if we don't get it right within the organization alone. And so from where you sit as a certified certified accountant, you see all of this. You see how life impacts the organization and its productivity, but you see how systems also impact the situation as well. What are some of your recommendations? I really want to look at this in detail now. What can one do to be able to fix this?
From an individual perspective, I think it comes down for you to have boundaries as well, to understand where you are at and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, even in terms of like the excessive amount of hours and stuff like that. But if we were looking at work burnout as a whole total in terms of the company and the organizations and stuff like that, we have to look at our systems. Our systems are not the most productive. You may have individuals going to work doing things on a daily basis that are not needed. And sometimes what happens is that people will continue to do this work because they want to earn a living, but there's not that, you know, real focus on doing a quality job because they don't think like, oh, this is beneficial to anyone. So we want to start to look at our systems. Is there a safer way to do this? Is there a better way to do this? Is there a more efficient way to do this? Are these systems talking to each other? We want to be able to speak to your staff to get the input from them. Is okay to put a system in place, or is okay to implement someone, to implement something, but the individuals actually doing the job should actually have some level of way in. Like, how does this translate at the end of the day to the amount of hours that we're spending at work? Is there a better way for us to do this? Is there a format in which we can have feedback? Am I allowed to be able to go to the HR department, to go to X, Y, and say, well, you know what? I think that based on what we're doing here, maybe we should look at XYZ, as opposed to saying this is our rules and this is how this works.
So we're looking with Sandra Gittins at this whole question of burnout and balance, and the cost. If we do it right and if we don't do it wrong, there's also a cost to doing it. And so I'm showing that there are people who run businesses today who are saying, okay, you're saying to me, Tanja, to be able to sort out my systems in the office as well so that my people are happy. But where am I going to find the money to change out the technology into such a way that they're happy? And why should I do it to make them happy? They're here to do where I pay them. What do you say to that?
Yes, but there's also a cost to the company, because I would like to think that most companies understand that being efficient is also very beneficial to their bottom line. If you have happy staff, we all know profit starts with happy staff. There are a lot of benefits in terms of implementing systems that work and fine-tuning efficiencies and stuff like that that will hit to the bottom line. I think because we are more in an environment where it is more human related, where persons or sometimes companies think, okay, well, if A person doesn't do this job, I can get B, C, or D to do this job, then they don't necessarily have that motivation to implement something that they think is going to cost money on the top line, which they may not necessarily feel that they can see the benefits of. But I also say that sometimes people just do this as emotion and not that they've run the numbers to understand how will efficiency translate to my bottom line. And these are things that as companies we really have to start to get into, and not necessarily just looking at the top like, oh, this is a big, large initial outlay that I have to look at, but also do the cost analysis of why it is that you should be doing what we think you should be doing.
You're looking at a cultural shift.
Yes.
Generally, because for time immemorial, the unit of production doesn't necessarily sit in the office upstairs that says I'm the boardroom. That unit of production is on the floor to do this and to do that, to go home, because at the end of the month I shall pay you. And that's our agreement. So I've met my agreement to you, so therefore meet your agreement to me. And you're asking now, whether you're in the HR or in the C-suite, to look at the individual for just a moment, because they are equally important. That's a shift. How do you see this working?
It is a shift, but also remember that we've also have a shift in human behavior. So, there's a lot of conversation about the boomers and millennials and Gen X and Gen Zs and all of this conversation, which, to be honest with you, I try not to get into the stereotype of it. Yes. But we also have individuals who are now saying to us, I am not a machine. I am a human being. I come to work and there are certain expectations that I have. So it's okay to say, like in the past, if you look at like the theory of Maslow's, hierarchy of needs, we talked about being able to have food and whatever. The individuals that we have now are not individuals who are out there worried about whether or not they may be able to feed themselves. They come from families who are ensuring that they have been able, those needs have been able to take care of them. So we're higher up now on the list of needs. So they're saying, I need to have a level of self-fulfillment when I come into this job. I don't just want to come to work and press these buttons when the day come, earn a paycheck and go home. What else is there? We talk about life is short, but at the same time, are we living a lifestyle that says life is short, I may not be here that long, I want to be intentional and productive. So sometimes businesses may sit back and think that they can continue in the way that they have always, but the environment will help them shift in some aspects, because at some point in time, we're going to get to the point where the worker is going to be saying, this is how I want to work. And I'm not necessarily saying that that is the way to go in terms of from bottom up, but I'm saying that we have to find a better balance.
So how do we find, what's the balance? What do you see as a good balance to strike that we can know that everyone in this equation is happy?
I think we have to get to the point where human resource is not just about rules and regulations, but there's an aspect of health and wellness and well-being. And look at foremost, like what is it to work when I come to work here at CBC. If I'm a CBC employee, what does that mean, health and wellness for my well-being? And once companies can start to look at that from that perspective, then they can say, okay, this is the type of environment that I want to create for the staff when they come in here. This is the type of environment that I think that they are better workers or they're better productive coming out of them from that. Also, remember that the workers also have a responsibility to show up and actually do the job in which they're paying you for. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense.
That's right.
Bottom line is king. People are in business to earn a profit. So we have to be able to find the balance in between of this is a worker who is coming to work. There are human beings. They have a certain level of expectations of how we should provide for them. And the worker also needs to understand this is a business. We're here to earn a living. And I think there needs to be a lot more communication going on in between there. And I think that we also have to look at some of the practices that we've had from yesteryear and understand that they're not going to carry us through.
We live in a society, though, at the same time. So while this business A might attend to what you're talking about, business B, which is just next door, is not. And then I have to leave business A to go into the community to engage with business B. And I'm going to run into a space which is going to annoy me. You understand what I'm saying? And so we want to be able to create pleasant experiences generally, but it's a community, it's Barbados.
Yeah.
Do you see this being an approach that Barbados needs to really pay close attention to and to adopt?
Yes, I do. And not only from the burnout perspective, I think if we look at the general conversation, right now, we're having a lot of conversation about the customer service in Barbados. And there are persons who will say, well, this is what they pay me for. They don't pay me to smile. They don't pay me to be nice. They don't pay me to be whatever. I'm doing the job in which they're paying me for. And even from that perspective, and if we look at a larger outlay, you know, we're talking about we're a tourism country. We're a tourism country that has customer service problems.
Yes.
And all of it translate if we want to talk back to the dollars, because at the end of the day, dollars is the numbers that all of us understand. So yes, as a country as a whole, this is something that I think that we need to really look at. I know that I was speaking to someone quite recently, and I know that the Ministry of Health, that they have their health and wellness coming up in September, and I know that that's one of the things that they want to focus on. There are a lot of organizations out there now that are focused on health and wellness. I've just presented for the TVET Council, and they had a whole conference on health and wellness. And these are always going to be, you know, for the benefit of companies and also for the benefit of the country as a whole. But I think it is the right direction in terms of making certain that health and wellness, but mostly well-being, becomes a big factor into who we are going forward.
One of those factors in our well-being is our finances.
Yes.
I can't walk away without talking about that for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about that balance and how struggling with finances at times can really exhaust you.
Yeah. And there's a big correlation between health and money. There are some studies out there where they are looking at the financial stress that an individual may have and the effects that it have on their mental health and their well-being. And, you know, it's not just because outside is more expensive, but it is also because we live in a world now where there is some level of financial aspects in terms of everything we do in life. Even if we're talking about medical care or we're talking about food and quality food and stuff like that, we need to have that finances there. Outside is getting a lot more expensive. You know, there's still the conversation of whether or not it's better in this era from that era or whatever. And there also are a lot of conversation now around whether or not financial stress is what is translating into work burnout, and the correlation between that financial stress and work burnout, or if it's the other way around, between whether the work burnout then is adding to the financial stress. Because if you are work burnout and you're looking at burnout recovery, you have options, which is either to walk away from what you are doing, to seek boundaries, to get some help, and there's a financial cost attached to all of that. So when we look at burnout, and we have to look at the financial aspect of it, and it's not in terms of productivity being lost by companies or countries or individuals, it is also by those hard decisions. What can I do as an individual to help with my burnout recovery, and what is the financial cost attached to it? And, you know, in terms of how do you set those boundaries for yourself, I look at a lot of authentic financial living, and that is that if you know who you are as a person, then you are not going to commit yourself to societal pressures, but you want to spend that money on how you think you should spend it on. You don't need the biggest car, you don't need the biggest house, but maybe what you need is some mental therapy. You need a mental therapist, you need a dietitian, you need better health care, you know? So sometimes when we look at, even in terms of getting a new job, we look at lifestyle creep. Do I want to pretend that I'm up with the Joneses and find this social club, or do I need a bigger Jeep? Or maybe what I need is some domestic help to help me when I've already worked 14 hours a day and still have to come home to you know, to the children of the house and the cooking and the cleaning. So the financial aspect of it is very big component when we start to look at burnout as a whole.
Oh Lord, life. You have to say it like that, because life can sometimes feel so heavy when one stops for just a moment. But you're thinking, if we just stop for just a moment and reflect and consciously dissect everything that we do and parcel it out accordingly, we'll see the things that we don't need, that we need to shed, and the things that we can actually begin to do and live life a whole lot more meaningfully. And that calls for a lot of financial planning, because at the end of the day, we are still our money. We still have that to deal with as well. Oh, Tanja, I had to take a deep breath because that was so much. But clearly, there's an opportunity if you care to. So let's continue to talk a little bit more about this, so that people can begin to unravel the pain they're experiencing. And sometimes we don't know exactly where the pain is coming from, whether it's burnout at work, burnout at home, burnout with the community, and begin to tackle this in a systemic way that we can fix it. We can really fix it.
So one of the ways I say to individuals, right, you want to look at what your core values are. Who am I as a person? And I know sometimes because we've been raised in such a small environment, the societal pressures are very heavy on us. We have the religious aspect of it. We have what people think we should be doing. You should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should be a this, you should be that, whatever. Sometimes people go from one house to the next, you know. You don't get a chance to say, I am Pearson, I like purple, I like this, I like putting in sauce. who are you as a person? You want to dissect your core values. Integrity is important to me. Financial wellness is important to me. Family is important to me. Who are you when no one is looking? Once you're able to establish that, then you look at, I always say to persons, look at your lifestyle. You get up 1 year from now, you're in the perfect place, the perfect location. You have the people around you you love the most. You're doing the best job that you like, that makes you feel fulfilled. What does that look like for you? And once you establish what your core values are, once you establish what your ultimate goals are, then you are able to set a path for yourself, or a strategic path for yourself to work towards that. So as you said, you then realize to see, I need to shed this. This is not actually important to me, but however, this is important to me. So then you are able to put a plan in place that more reflects who you are. So that plan also helps eliminate the burnout aspect of it. Because sometimes the burnout comes from a performance. You spend your life performing. You go to work and you do this job. You go home and you're someone's mom, you're someone's dad, you're someone's wife. You go to church and you're this. You go to a social club and you're this. And then you realize that you're just going through life and you're doing what is expected of you, but it is not necessarily who you are to the core. And that also leads to tremendous amounts of burnout.
All right, Tanja. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanja Gittins. Wow. There's a lot. All of this is in your book?
Some of it. I know. I do speak a lot about, because I've done a lot of research on, especially like religion and the plantocracy era, and how it's still affecting who we are as people today, and success and fear. Fear is a very big factor in a lot of things that we do, because we have not touched on the point, as you said. We're looking at a transformation of companies and how we work, but you see that word fear, that little four-letter word, that comes a lot into play. And since I've written the book, as I speak to people and I work with people, I realize that we don't lack knowledge, we don't lack motivation, but that fear is what keeps us back.
What's the name of the book?
Living Loud on a Budget, Authentic Financial Living.
That's a long name. Living Loud on a Budget.
Yes.
Living Loud on a Budget on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's at UE Bookstore as well.
All right, so check it out. Living Loud. Just key those words in and you'll see it. Tanja Gittins. Tanja Gittins is her name. And then get the copy. Well, there's a lot.
Yes.
Thank you so very much indeed for talking to me.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. She's a personal wealth strategist. She's also the author of that book, Living Loud, and you can find it on Amazon. You can get it from the UE Bookstore as well. It's a good read, and it sounds like a good strategy we should all consider and adopt.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning.